and welcome to lesson 14 in the education topic. This lesson we're going to look at gender in education achievement and the explanations for why different genders perform differently. So we're going to also look at describing some of the key ideas of Willis, and we're going to look at what functionalists, Marxists and feminists believe about gender and education achievement. So as a little starter, if you were tasked with, in school, improving boys' achievement in exams, what would you suggest? What do you think you could do to improve boys' achievement? So again, feel free to pause, complete activities at your own pace. Key vocabulary as well, this lesson would be STEM. This stands for science, technology, engineering and maths. So there's 6 key things that we're going to look at that affect gender and achievement in this lesson. I'd suggest making notes in your books, but again, you can do this however fits your learning style. So we've got legal reforms, changing expectations, socialisation, hidden curriculum, pupil-teacher interactions, and subcultures. And as with the previous lessons, some of these are internal factors and some are external factors. So your external factors are things that happen outside school. So this would be legal reforms, changing expectations, and socialisation. Then the things that are happening within school are your internal factors. So hidden curriculum, pupil-teacher interactions, and subcultures. So firstly, we're going to look at legal reforms. So 2 key laws that have changed would be the Equality Pay Act and Sex Discrimination Act. These have basically both encouraged women to become more involved in the job market, have equal rights within the workplace. So this has led to greater career opportunities for girls. You need to work hard now if you're going to get in one of those top positions. So previously, when girls were more interested with lower end career options or just being housewives, for instance, maybe career, education wasn't that important, but now it is a lot more important than perhaps previously. Also, we've had changes in the educational policies. So things like the Education Reform Act meant that actually everyone got taught the same thing. So girls got taught maths and science all the way up to 16, where perhaps they wouldn't have been previously. So what I'd suggest for this is bullet point any key changes that you think have impacted on gender. So you want to name a few key kind of laws or acts. And how do you think these would have impacted on girls' achievement? So you want to link it to, or this would have made them work harder, and explain why. Then we've got changing expectations. So things like the women's movement and feminism in the 1960s, and obviously still happening today, have had a quite considerable impact on improving expectations and self-esteem of women. So women now, it's not just about being a housewife and a mother. You can look to the wider world and have those kind of higher expectations, really. And there was a study by Sue Sharp, she did it in 1967, and it found that basically for most girls, their priorities were falling in love, marriage, husband, children, jobs, kind of came later. Whereas when this study was repeated in the 1994, girls' priorities had massively shifted. So girls were a lot more interested in things like jobs, careers, and being able to support themselves. Socialisation. So, as we've done about previously, parents do tend to buy different toys for their children depending on their gender. So girls get things like dolls, which can encourage their language skills. They can communicate how they're looking after the child, talk to the child. So they kind of build up those language skills. Unless you're my child who took all the clothes off the doll and then has thrown it. I think she's more interested in trying to put the doll's clothes on a penguin, but that's for another day. This then puts girls at an advantage because school is basically about language. You've got to be able to, ask for help, write in depth for exams, and you need good levels of comprehension and writing skills. So girls, because of their socialisation, are at an advantage to boys. It also gives them more opportunities in schools to kind of show these skills and then therefore achieve. Hidden curriculum, as we've done a few times. So in the past, the hidden curriculum was basically there to undermine girls, showing them that, well, they're second best to boys. Boys were the dominant ones in the classroom. And teachers expected boys to do better than girls previously. However, since the 1980s, girls as a group are massively outperforming boys in most nationally. So there's still this kind of progress to be made, particularly kind of with working class girls whose achievement is still not great, and also getting girls into certain subjects. So for instance, there's still this weakness of girls within science, technology, engineering and maths. There are at the bottom 2 different videos. Everyone should definitely watch the first one, which is how to encourage girls into STEM. It talks about different ways and things students and schools can do to try and encourage girls. And then there's a challenge video which talks about different countries and how many people are in careers that are in STEM. And it's quite an interesting one to have a look at. It's a bit more difficult to understand though, but it is worth having a look at. So, number 5, this is teacher-pupil interactions. So, teachers today have massively different expectations of girls than they did in the 1960s. Some sociologists have suggested that there's been a feminisation of education. This basically means it's a lot more of a female-dominated environment, and this then benefits girls and makes boys feel less comfortable. So, for example, only 30% of teachers are male. And at primary school level, that's only 17%. So within education, you can see that maybe males might be lacking role models in terms of who they can look up to. So why do you think boys are not going into teaching? So have a little think. Why do you think it's not seen as a desirable career perhaps for males? Also, Tony Sewell, who we'll do more on later as well, argued that girls are more willing to conform to rules. Girls are generally more conformist, whereas boys, not so much. So boys are expected to be livelier than girls, and girls are expected to be more studious, like you just get on with your work. And teachers often respond to those stereotypes. Now, in most classrooms, if you think of your kind of experiences, this might be something you've seen. So male peer groups, if we look at subcultures, male peer groups often devalue schoolwork, so it's not seen as cool to be, getting on with your work. Boys may achieve kind of peer group status by being disruptive, so, it's where they want their mates to laugh at them, that kind of vibe. They might lose classroom time because they might be sent out of the room. Interestingly, in my whole time since being at Little Over, I've only had to send 2 students out of the room, and both of them were boys. So, make of that what you will. Boys are 3 times more likely than girls to be excluded from school, whether it's a permanent exclusion or kind of a fixed term, so maybe for a few days. And the most common reason given for this is disruptive behaviour. Schoolwork is often seen as girly, and some develop this kind of laddish anti-school subculture where it's just not cool to work. Have a little think, does this match your experiences? Now, I wouldn't use our sociology classroom as the basis because I think the girls can hold their own in that room. So, I'm not sure about that. But on a whole, across all your subjects, do you think boys are more disruptive perhaps? Is it seen as more kind of expected that boys behave in that way? So have a little think. So, with our 3 main theories, obviously feminism is going to be the bigger chunk for this section. So, I've got 6 different statements there. What I want you to do is pause the video, read the statements, and have a think, where would I put them? To give you a few hints, some of the key concepts are concepts that we've looked at already. And if they've mentioned the word feminism, they're probably in the work column feminism. So, yeah, there you go. Pause. Don't cheat. So, answers. Right, your functionalism is basically talking about meritocracy again, like when we did social class. And they're saying, well, education benefits everyone. It doesn't matter about your gender. However, you could criticise them by going, well, they're just ignoring gender. They're not really addressing it. And this idea of patriarchal attitudes, like how functionalism is all about supporting traditional gender roles, well, that is really just supporting the patriarchy. So, gender-wise, it's not great. Marxism, so we've got Willis's study that we've looked at previously. This is the lads. Theirs was all about, being working class lads, demonstrating, how their masculinity was important in terms of their anti-school subculture. So being masculine was part of that, so their gender influenced it. Also, we've talked about as well the crisis of masculinity. Most working class men are experiencing this in terms of they don't know really where they fit into society anymore. So if they're low achievers in school, they're less likely then to be successful in employment, so that can feed into that. However, as always, Marxists focus too much on social class and really don't look at gender that much. And finally, we've got feminism. So they would argue that schools are still promoting these patriarchal values. There's still quite a gendered curriculum that really fails to engage working class girls. And it can lead women into unfulfilling, low-paid employment. So, for instance, previously I've overseen subjects like health and social care, childcare, things like that. And this was very much geared towards girls, which would then, in a lot of cases, lead them into perhaps quite low-paid employment. So the caring sector is not always statistically the best paid employment. So, feminists would have issues with that. And feminists have also accused teachers of negative labelling of girls and maybe not encouraging them as much as they perhaps could. However, feminism massively underestimates the change in the positions of females in education, employment. We've got a lot more female teachers who are good role models for students, got a lot of female head teachers as well, and there are more girls now than ever going into STEM subjects. On the previous video, the one that's a bit more challenging, they talk about, yes, there's not a lot of girls in maybe physics and maths, but more females go into things like veterinary science, medicine, dentistry than boys. So there is still quite a lot of progress that has happened. So that is the end of the gender topic. Feel free to email me if you've got any questions, and let me know if you have any issues, and I'll see you next lesson. Bye.